Dan, we're picking up all the sounds. So you can just, so you keep that muted better.
All right. Can you hear me right now?
Okay, we're good, Mr. Chair. If you want to.
All right, I'd like to call the meeting to order. Roll call. Kathy, you got the names of everybody here?
I do.
You? Okay. First item on the agenda, then, the second item would be the approval of the agenda as written. Any additions or deletions? Move to accept has been made by Rick. The second, Dan.
Dan, are you there?
Yes, I second it. I'm sorry, I had to do the dog. I'll get it.
The motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion is carried.
Yeah, I think we are going to experience a little bit of lag, sir, just so you're aware, between Dan and us.
Okay. So we'll give you a couple of extra seconds here. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from our last meeting on January 27th. Any corrections or notes on that?
Mr. Chair, I see none. I personally have no questions.
Okay. Dan?
Dog looks good.
I'd entertain a motion to accept those minutes as written.
So
Moved.
I'll second.
And a second. All those in favor say aye.
moved. Aye.
Aye.
Motion is carried. Number 4 is our public comment. This I just checked with Kathy. Any news on your side? Keith, any requests?
No, sir.
I would like to make a small statement.
Okay.
We have this section in our agenda each and every month. And for anybody that's listening out there or watches these, I'd like to remind you that you have an opportunity here, either by email or call in or something prior to our meeting. We'd be happy to hear anybody that has comments, questions, or concerns. This is your time. So the fact that nobody, since we've gone to COVID preparations and everything else, it's made it more complicated, but we're still here and still open. So please, if you have issues or concerns or questions, please feel free to contact somebody at utility office and we will go from there. Okay, moving on to number 5, the certification of accounts payable. That list of payables was in your packets. I looked them over, and as always, it's just a pile of stuff in there, and most of it I've seen before because I go through the bills each month. But if there are any questions or concerns on this list, this would be your time.
Mr. Chairman,
Sir.
a couple of questions of understanding. I'm seeing with number 1 and number 47, Health Partners, January and February insurance. I haven't caught that before. Is this a month that there's 2 billings being paid?
Well,
Kathy, if you want to answer that.
We typically pay it a month ahead of time. So the last one in December, the last one in the year, for December would be for January's health insurance. So we hold that one off until January 1st.
Okay.
So December has nothing for health insurance, but January would have to,
Okay.
because January then gets back on track.
All right. I didn't think I saw that before, so
No.
that clarifies that. Another number 60, storage battery system, batteries, $3,070. Help me on that. What is that?
Those are the power plant batteries, correct, Scott?
Yes.
Yeah, we have, so the power plant has a battery pack underneath in the basement. And part of it is to help with the starting up the CAT in case we go into a blackout condition.
Correct.
Yep.
Because you need to have some energy to start
Sure.
the engine. Those batteries that were down there had reached the end of their lifespan, and we had it included in the approved 2021 budget to replace those batteries, and that's what that $3,000.
How big of batteries are these?
They're good size batteries, multiple of them together.
The whole bunch of little
So how you got that radio track thing? Is it all in series or parallel? Are we running 12 volt or what?
The cat is running 24 volt, and the rest of the old units run 125 volt DC.
Wow.
And there's also battery backup at each of the substations, the south sub and the north sub too.
Are you able to put those on a load, obviously, how are you determining when it's time?
We do monthly inspections on them.
Okay.
Every battery bank has its own battery charger,
All right,
and Jim tests them every month.
excellent.
Can I just explore that? Are those lithiums or are we still using lead acids or what are we?
No, they're lead acids, yeah.
There's not, okay. That's a discussion for another time. Okay, any other questions? Got those sorted out pretty well? In that case, I would entertain a motion to approve the account payable.
Certification, I so move.
So moved.
Dan?
Yeah, I second that.
Motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
All right,
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you very much. On to reports. You want to give just your explanation of what's in our packet there, Keith?
Sure, it is a copy of the most recent SIPA minutes for the SIPA board meeting, as well as the key metrics. We do not have the financial reports in there. What happens is at the end of the year, we're doing a lot of year-end activities. So we have not closed out January yet. It's pretty typical as we're trying to do some catch up on the financial side. So that's why you don't see financial reports for January. And that's just the timing issue in terms of how we're doing it. The general ones will be available next month.
Okay. Thank you. And then updates. You want to run through those, Keith?
Yes, sir. On the electric department, as everybody's fully aware, we had a cold snap last week. We ran our generation units, all of them, Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday for a total of 36 hours is what I had written down, right, Scott? Yeah. 36 hours of runtime on the units. Everything went smoothly. Everything operated the way we expected. We did, however, notice now that there is some discoloration in the diesel fuel, so we pulled some supplies on that, which we're providing to our supplier. It may indicate the presence of some sort of biologic, which would have to be removed via an additive. Now, if that's the case, we're going to have to do a little bit of legwork to figure out the right additive to use because we don't want it affecting the older engines. But it's just something we're looking into, just to make sure that everything's operating properly. Other than that, I got to give a credit to the power plant crew as well as the line crew for helping out during that time. It was they were extended runs, and the fact that the engines started up and were able to run at full power, I think is a testimony to the care that is given to those units to make sure that they're ready in an emergency situation. I do know some of our colleagues, there were a couple engines that didn't fire, but we were 100% online once we got the call. And that's pretty impressive to me. I think that speaks, like I said, I think that says amazing things about the staff that we have here. So I just want to give them some acknowledgement for that. On the distribution system, our primary activities continue to focus on some AMI work as well as tree trimming to continue to promote reliability on our system. In the water department, we are working with our contractor to replace the actuators, and that's in plant 1, right? Or is that correct? Plant 1. So that is underway. That was approved in the 2021 budget. And then as we've been working through our reporting process, both for the state and federal activities on the water side, we found some data discrepancies in the meter of the reclaim pump. Didn't seem to be, it didn't quite make sense to us. We did some investigation into it and determined that one of the settings in the pump had been changed, probably during our SCADA upgrade system. But once we found that, we restored it to its original value, and those meters are now reporting accurate data. It's being on the reclaim tank, it doesn't have impact our billings at all. It's just a matter of trying to make sure we understand where all the water is going. So I made the appropriate corrections in our state reports on that, and going forward, everything will match up.
Okay, thank you.
So those are the department updates.
Next item would be the city of Princeton update. Councilor Zimmer, maybe you'd like to address that?
Yes, I can do that.
Sorry?
I can do that unless anybody else would like to. Just teasing.
If you want, we can give you a mic and you can still have fun. Indicate to your heart's content.
The biggest issue, the biggest agenda item we had is that the last time I met with you, we were in the process of interviewing a city administrator candidates, and the city has made a job offer, and I think you're well aware of it, that she has accepted that job offer. That's Michelle McPherson from Mille Lacs County. She is coming with a range of quite a bit of experience, and we're hoping to have her aboard March, I think it's March 8th. So it's moving relatively quick, and that was our goal, was to find the right person in a reasonable short amount of time because of everything that's going on in the city. So that's a huge update for us. And once she is aboard, there's a number of priorities that the city council has for her. One of them, of course, is to look forward to with the joint meeting with you, the PUC, and I think we still are shooting for April on that. And I'll do my best to update her also when she comes aboard of what's going on, what I can relate to her, and that sort of thing. So that's a huge, I guess, accomplishment, really, because as you well know, if you didn't have Mr. Butcher here, things, it's just not as
It'd be us.
you know what I mean? It's just not. More things get done when you have someone in charge running things. But with that, I have to say, and I have it in my notes here, that the city staff really have took a step forward and have worked well in providing guidance and efficiency and productivity in that way. They've done an excellent job, and that should be more. It really is. We have good staff in the city, just like you have good staff here. There's just no way to put it other than they're good people, good workers, good staff. Some other issues, the simulcast I reported last time. We had a meeting with Representative Stauber and his group, along with the sheriff of Mille Lacs and the communications director and a number of some other people that were involved in our emergency management team. And then we had another follow-up meeting maybe a week or so ago, a couple weeks now, with our local commissioner, Jenny Reynolds, and the sheriff again, and the communications director on getting that simulcast moving in the right direction. And from what indications are, it's going well. We have the tower up. We just need to put all the pieces together. We met with Motorola. The grant coming up that we're hoping to tap into, and it's all seems to be very positive, would be in July. And it's a large grant to accomplish this project. And it gets back to, if you recall, in 9/11, September, when that all went haywire. Remember, one of the things that they had said was law enforcement, the fire departments, medical staff, medical personnel need to be able to communicate. Well, that's what we need. we're still working on that. And an example is if you're in a building like this with a portable radio, the police department, fire department, or EMS might not be able to communicate. And with this simulcast, it should improve matters drastically. So we're moving forward in that. That's one of the top priorities that the city has, is to accomplish that. Still working on 19th and 21st Avenue connection to get that connected. Stephanie's doing a good job looking for grants, ways to get that accomplished. So that's moving forward. Another item is the chamber and the park board are working together to promote our parks, along with other communities to promote their parks. It's kind of a joint thing with, I think it's Big Lake and some other communities, to show off our parks, what we're doing in our parks. And we really do have a nice park system here in Princeton. We really, really do. For our size, we do a good job of that. See, that's about it. I mean, there's other things going on, but I think once we get Michelle aboard, things will, not saying they aren't running smooth, but things will run more rapidly because you have somebody in charge.
What is Michelle's last name, Rose?
I think it's McPherson, McPherson is how. Am I right?
Yes, that is.
Thank you. Yeah. I'm really excited about her coming aboard. She's really enthused and really has a heart for the city. That's what we need. So
I've heard nothing but good things about her.
What was that?
I've heard nothing but good things about her. as well.
Absolutely. Me too.
I guess to make it official, that I'd like to invite Mrs. McPherson or Mrs. McPherson, whichever it is, to come and attend our March meeting with us. Sit at the table and get to know some of us right up face and in mass as close as possible.
All this.
So if you could pass that along very much. Keith, the general manager's general update.
Yes, sir. On the regulatory side, I want to let you know that for the Department of Natural Resources, the Empire's report has been submitted. For the Minnesota Department of Commerce, our distributed energy resources and distributed generation report has been submitted. At the federal level, our EIA 923 report has been submitted. For the Minnesota DNR, our water conservation report has been submitted. And for the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, our air emission inventory report has been submitted. As you can see, February and March tend to be pretty busy months for me as we do all of our regulatory updates for the prior year. Coming up next, April 1st is my next big day with several reports due, including some information for OSHA, as a reliability report for the NPUC and a service quality report for the NPUC. And then the EIA 861, which is the big one, is due April 30th. So I will start the process on those as well. On the administrative side, we have received notice that IBEW Local Union 160 would like to open negotiations for a labor agreement. So a time will be scheduled for that, and I will let you know how that goes. That time, a meeting, specific date has not been set yet, but I expect to be contacted by the union rep to start those conversations. And as I mentioned, the union rep name is Andy Kiefer, and he will be representing Local 160. I did have here, I'll be talking about some city stuff later on. We continue to coordinate with the city on a lot of different activities. I know I've been talking with Mary Lou and Stephanie on all sorts of different projects, so that's all gone very well. On the IT side, we have our data backup system installed and operating. That was completed the first week in February. And then we just completed our network server upgrade to the Yukon server yesterday. And that all went smoothly. So that's all moving forward as well. On our DSM, demand side management, which is our energy efficiency programs, the report for 2020 came in on Enterlight. Enterlight is our behavioral program. It's the graphs that you see on our bill that says how you compare to your neighbors. So that is a behavioral program that we implement as a DSM activity, which we're meets our statutory obligations, which is why we do that. Interlake found for Princeton that our overall savings was 2.5%. SIPA's aggregated savings for last year was 17.28 kilowatt hours per customer. What that means is customers who got those graphs saw an average reduction of 17.28 kilowatt hours compared to those who are in the control group who don't see those graphs. So we do have data that says that those graphs do result in people making different decisions. When they have information, they act accordingly. Those savings are actually a 19% increase over 2019 performance, which was good news. But in summary, I just wanted to make sure the commission was aware that, this is a behavioral program, still relatively new. So it is nice to see that these savings are persisting over the years, and they will all be included in our regulatory filings that we make with the state, as well as the feds. Want to mention a couple of external activities that we've been involved in. We did have the MMUA legislative conference earlier this month. And I believe, Greg, you were?
I was in surgery.
You were in surgery, that's right. Rick, I think, was in attendance, and then Dan was in attendance as well. So they went over some of the current activities going on at the legislature and provide some background. I don't know, Rick, if you wanted to say anything in regards to that conference. It was a little odd because we had to do it via Zoom.
Yeah, that was my first one, so I was just open ears.
Yeah.
Just listening.
Yeah, so MMUA tries to keep the membership updated on all regulatory activities. So it was a good summary. And then I did give a presentation last Thursday on February 18th to the Princeton Economic Development Authority. I gave them, and this was at a request that I had gotten from Tom via Stephanie, that it would be good to present there. So Mayor Walker was there, Victoria Helene was there, and so it was good to have some representation from the city council in attendance. I went through and just, again, kind of explained who we are, what we do, our involvement within the community, but then started talking about the industrial park annexation that the city is working on. They are planning on, they have a public hearing for tomorrow night on the industrial park. Once that formally gets annexed and I get a copy of the order, then I can forward that on to East Central Energy and we can start getting that service territory switched over to Princeton Public Utilities. The information I provided to the EDA, I did a lot of comparative statistics for them. To me, when we're looking at bringing in industrial customers and commercial customers, what I've always found as the two primary motivators is workforce, which I know the city's trying to provide information on that. And then from a utility standpoint, it's actually usually less about rates and more about reliability. And that's where the municipal utilities really shine because we've got generation right here. And we have a local crew that can respond immediately. So I was giving the EDA that kind of information as well, so they know that when we're trying to bring people into town, that reliability has value to businesses. So that information was provided. And then I also, a lot of other things. Our energy efficiency rebate programs, which helps business customers look at their operating costs and try to keep those as low as possible by installing LED light bulbs and high efficiency HVAC equipment, compressed air activities, things like that. But the whole idea was if as a city and utility work together, because the city is looking at maybe some TIF stuff, maybe some other incentives or other ways to try to entice people into town. The utility also has programs as well. And so working together, we can put, I think, a really, really attractive package to help bring in some industrial customers and bring in some jobs. So that all went very well. I thought I felt that it was received very positively. There were some good questions. We had a good discussion, and overall, it was just a good meeting. Want to mention too that we did also officially announce that Jeremy is our new electric superintendent.
Congratulations, Jeremy.
So he is joined join the leadership team as we move into the future and help guide this utility to provide the best service we can for our customers. Just give you a quick update on some COVID impacts as well. Looking at the data from 2020, we finished with our electric sales being 4.4% below the average. So that's kind of what we think the impacts of COVID have been on our revenues on the electric side. For January of this year, we experienced a 5% decrease below kind of our running 5-year average in terms of sales. So we're still continuing to see some impacts on the system. And then due to the extreme cold last week, we had planned to put in some limiters and some disconnects to address some of our larger arrear cases. But with the cold being what it was and how that impacts equipment and other things, we have delayed that one to March. So we will, with the network server upgrade yesterday and a Yukon upgrade tomorrow, we won't even have to do the limiters. We'll go straight to a program and we'll disconnect at that point. So we have that planned out for March. There. That is my manager's report, unless there are any questions.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to address Councilwoman Jules Zimmer and Keith, Manager PUC. In these incentives, these programs that the city may have and that utilities may have,
yes.
is the story written? I mean, if I came in there, person XYZ, and said, this is what I want to do, are these programs sitting on the shelf, or is there a format of qualification on how big, how small, you have to use it this way?
No, that's what we're working on.
Okay, so it's great that we do that, but it'll be frustrating if somebody comes in and says, well, that's what I want to do, but there's no guidelines or this and that. And I don't know who makes up those guidelines.
Well, as far as the city is concerned, that's why we have someone like Stephanie available to work through those things.
Okay.
And one of the programs that are available, we haven't pursued it yet because we haven't come across a customer big enough, is there is a potential for an economic development rate through SIMPA. That would have to get commission approval before we can do it. Obviously, I need to pull that information together for the commission so you guys can review it and make sure it's what you want to do. So since we don't have that on the books yet, that we don't have anything written up on it, but that is part of that agenda. As far as the energy efficiency stuff, we have some general summary sheets that we can share. But I had a conversation with SIMPA earlier this week to see if we could put together something a little bit more than that, a little bit flashier, with some pictures and perhaps a case study in another community. And they're kicking around some ideas there as well. So we are moving forward on that. I think we just don't have anything at the moment.
So I'm just wondering if it's a situation where, this is here and this is here and somebody walks in and we're not proactive in doing so, but you're saying that's happening. I'm just trying to walk through that process of how somebody new or with industry that wants to come here and we're not the ones stumbling, trying to figure out what we can and can't do. Or is there limits to this program and limits to this, or do you go after the piece of pie and then see what qualifications you do? Is it just going to be a long process? Or I'm trying to, that person that walks in the door, I want to keep them here. I don't necessarily want to.
Typically, and I can only speak from my experience.
Right.
Typically what happens is, somebody will come in. It is an interview process because they'll usually come in and they don't necessarily have their plan in place. They don't have the engineering work. They don't have load numbers for us. They don't have all that specific detail. It's the start of a conversation.
Right.
And so you're right. Part of what city economic development groups do is as they get more and more information, they say, okay, this program makes sense, that one doesn't, and they start to put a package together. Unfortunately, there isn't a standard program because each state offering, each local offering is different. Right, that can, you know, for people who haven't been through it, that might appear frustrating that we don't know what's going on. The problem is there's so many different things out there. We need to get more information than just say, hey, I want to put in a fast food restaurant. Okay, well, we still need to have some data to really start putting some numbers down. And so that's where we try to, again, it's an iterative process. So, okay, what are you thinking? What do you got? Well, here's kind of what we have, and you just kind of go back and forth for a while until you come up with a plan.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't think there's a cookie cutter that we can say, yes, go to cookie jar A.
Right.
You have to kind of say, guy wants to open up a new barber shop in town, build a new barber shop. That's one set of circumstances. Or Elon Musk says, I want to build a new Tesla plant just west of town. Well, that's some other things to think about. You know, so you kind of have to custom tailor these things based on what the customer is bringing in. And hopefully they come with enough information that both the city council and the guys at the utility can say, that's going to require 3 things. This is going to need some new planning. This is going to need whatever. And then they can custom make that decision. At least that's the way I envision us working with the customer.
Yeah.
Yes, Mr. Chair, if I can just interject here, I think what your comments, Rick, are right in line with our meeting that's going to come up. That's an excellent topic to have discussion about, is how do we handle these types of things? And that's where my conversations with Mr. Butcher in the past has been, it's more than just a year agency in the city, or you're an entity in the city, but it's a partnership to have in place on how to deal with things like that. How do we deal with the North Industrial Park annexation? You know, I mean, you knew what was happening. Your involvement, our involvement, pulled together. That's excellent discussion. That's what we need to meet about. That's why we should be meeting. So what you're saying, that should not
Lose this idea, and they're thinking about it as a concept. You have to start the conversation at some point. But what's really important to me is, and maybe was lacking prior, is the friendly smile handshake. Yeah, we'd love to work with you. Versus no. You know what I mean?
And I believe there's a way to do that, yet protecting the city and the PUC. There's a way to do that.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, I think we have an opportunity in this particular moment in time, if you will, to let the Public Utilities Commission and the public utilities themselves showcase what the city has to offer, and vice versa. So that when opportunities come before you or before us, we can say, great to have you. Boy, can we put some things together because we have these relationships with the city. We could work together, and there's a synergy there that makes all the sense in the world, and it's particularly advantageous to somebody coming here when that first contact says, we'd be happy to talk to you. Let me pull in this guy. Let me pull in this guy, so that we and they, you, can say, we've got resources here. We need to get Keith and Jeremy over here. We need to get a hold of Scott because we don't have a water loop out there or something. We have the resources between the city and us to entertain the kind of folks you're talking about that come to us with, what can you do for us? And they always have their hands out. But, you know, if they can bring something to the party, we're happy to talk to them. And I think we have a cooperative effort between the city and the commission to make that work for this community. I think that's the key to this whole deal. So,
the city can only show what we have with the city. We can show what we have. You know, we can give you fire protection, police protection, streets, the plowing, all of these things, and we put your part of it in there too. I mean, Belly. So,
and there are things where we've always taken the philosophy that water goes where sewer goes and vice versa, because it's an infrastructure issue. So the more we work together on that, And I think a lot of those meetings are best served with both entities being there. I know they're, and so another reason I'm really excited for Michelle to join us, because as we start putting this stuff together, I would like to do it in partnership with her as we talk to any potential businesses or projects. I think having the utility and the city together rather than having separate conversations will go a long way.
My notes here, just the fact that you ran the big generators for 36 straight hours to provide power to our community, that's a huge, huge asset. So, somebody comes in, man, you share that with them, you share what the city can offer, what PUC can offer.
Well, yep, exactly. And some of the numbers I presented to the EDA was, if you look at our 2019 numbers that were reported to the federal agencies, our average outage rate is 17 minutes. East Central Energy's is 58, if I remember correctly. If you look at the number of customers who experience an outage, East Central was 1.2, which means every customer experienced one outage and some experienced more than one. Ours was 0.1. So those kind of reliability numbers are really important to industries.
Congratulations.
But if you're an industrial customer that is running 3 shifts or 24/7, and if your line goes down, you're out running. So reliability becomes more important, like I said, than rates oftentimes. So those kind of things, again, with the city and utility working together, I think we can tell a great story.
Yeah, you got it.
Okay. Thank you, Keith. Good to ongoing business and another update on AMI.
Yes, for AMI, we have 64.9% complete on the electric side and 29.1% complete on the water side. I do want to mention to the commission that we are starting to experience some delivery delays. Currently, there is a worldwide shortage of some electronic components due to COVID. Some of these components come from overseas, and there have been factories in China that were completely shut down for a while for COVID. It's created a bit of a backlog. Our meter delivery schedule for AMI meters is currently 24 to 26 weeks, if I remember correctly. That is postponing things a little bit. At this time, Eden is still anticipating that we will receive all of our orders that will allow us to complete our electric AMI conversion yet this year. However, if these delays continue, I could see the AMI conversion extending into 2022. Just so the commission is aware of that we are experiencing some product delays.
Late in 2020, we authorized, gave an official okey-dokey to accelerate one of our shipments.
That was for water nodes. Yeah, correct.
It's on meters at the end of May, first week or two.
Yes, we get all of those.
Right.
So, because that number is actually 2 quarters. Yeah, because we did not get our first quarter shipment this year. Yeah, so, and it's not just us, it's utilities all over the country that's experienced the same thing. As an anecdote, I had actually heard that Ford was ceasing production of their F-150s for a little bit because they were short some electronic components. So it's impacting various industries right now. And then in the office, we're continuing to focus our efforts on the communication between UConn and Tower Manager. And then I already alluded to this, we are scheduled to upgrade our version of UConn, which is our AMI interface, to the current rev tomorrow. So everything is in place. We actually had a conference call with the Eaton rep this morning. She's getting a lot of preliminary stuff done and put in place, so that tomorrow afternoon, we can just do the upgrade. So everything is looking prepared, it is looking good so far. On the electric vehicle front, I have been meeting with the city to help identify locations for our 2 L2 chargers in town. The city's been provided a copy of our standard host agreement as well as a model EV parking ordinance for the city council to consider. Jules, what that comes down to really is you can set up an ordinance saying that this spot is for an EV charger. And if you're not using it, you should park somewhere else, and it gives the ability for the city. Some enforcement, if you want it. It's just, I wanted to make sure I had the information, so I was just forwarding it on as a potential.
To City Hall.
Correct, I can give it all this time. So the question that we have at the moment on the L2s is where to put them. We have 2 of them. I actually had a conversation this morning with a commercial customer who is interested in being a host. So I will be forwarding them the host agreement. It's the same host agreement we did with Coburns for them to review and see if they're open to it. But they seem very positive, very interested in hosting one. And so if that's the case, then we would have one left. And we are putting together a list of Jeremy and I are kind of working on what we think our top 5 locations would be. And then we want to meet with city staff to say, okay, what do you guys think? If we put it here, does that cause any problems with snow plowing? Does that cause, whatever the issue might be? So we really want to work closely with the city to make sure that this is a win-win for both of us. So all of that is underway. In addition, the DC fast charger at Coburn's currently is not charging fees. That's because Zep has had a problem with their credit card reader. They still anticipate that will be fixed by March 1st, in which case we will start implementing a fee structure. That was approved in our fee schedule for this year. So it's $5 per connection and 30 cents per minute, if I remember correctly. So that I'm still anticipating that will start on March 1st, and we've already got our side of everything set up so that we can collect those fees appropriately.
Mr. Butcher, do we know we have been pouring electricity into it?
Yes, we have. I have load shades, so I can see that there's somebody that almost every lunch hour, Monday through Friday, is plugging into it.
True.
Yes. And actually, because of the credit card reader being out, Zeph is actually covering some of those costs since we weren't able to collect it through our fee structure. They took responsibility for it, which I think is really stand out. But yes, we're seeing activity in the morning, and then over the lunch hour, and then sporadically in the late afternoon, early evening.
Do you know if we are on some of those EV apps for phones? Are we showing up?
Yes, we are. I've already looked at a couple of those, and as soon as we get the credit card reader set up, we will have our fee structure data in there as well, so people can know ahead of time what the charges will be.
Then when we establish the L2s at locations, those will be add-ons on those same apps. You'll find
Correct.
both level 2 and level 1.
That is correct. And there will be, I anticipate that my recommendation is that we have a fee structure on those as well. Those obviously will be a different fee structure because of the value of the service is different. And I will have that for the commission when we have sites defined and a plan for actual installation.
Can you tell me that again is $5 and what?
For the DC fast charger, it's $5 per connection and 30 cents per minute, if I remember correctly. And a typical charge is 30 minutes, 20, 30 minutes. If you're going from really low.
And in no time at all, we'll just have a plethora of electronic or electric vehicles descending upon Princeton to their shopping and charging. Here at town. Cool. Very good.
I just have an interesting question, if I may. Somebody that I was talking to said what if we were years down the road and this happened in Texas and there's 100,000 electric cars there, but everyone's dead in the water. And it was just an
Yes.
interesting question that if there's no power, like in Texas for a long period of time, you can't start your gas engine and go do something.
Correct. There are, I would say there are charging stations. Regular Energy has one at their Maple Grove headquarters that does have solar collectors on the roof. So they're trying to accomplish
This
some of
was
it.
a futuristic, where everybody has electric cars, not now, but 30 years from now or whatever, if something like that happens again. It creates one problem not having electric, but now you can't drive a car either.
Yeah,
This kind of gets into the conversations Keith and I have had before, is that this is the 100%. If you want to have 100% solar, you're going to have a hard time charging things at night. If you're going to have 100% wind generation, you're going to have a difficult time feeding the net on those times when it's not really very windy. But what happens is, and everybody wants to talk about total green. I'm with you, but from a practical standpoint, the net is really fed by a lot of different things. And some of that redundancy that's out there, I think the folks in Texas might not realize it, but they were getting some electrons from Princeton, Minnesota, right down into Dallas, because we had that capacity to do it. So we have diesel, there are natural gas, there are solar, but having a mix, even though it might be 70 or 80 or 90% green, having those other backups in the loop are an important part of our process and an important part of our place in that grid. So when people start talking about, well, the whole thing will go down if everybody has electric cars, it could be problematic.
It wasn't so much that, it wasn't a complaint or anything like that. It was just a futuristic question.
Yeah, what if?
It's not that it's too much on the grid. The whole grid went down in Texas, so therefore those people couldn't even move.
yeah. What's interesting though is
It was just a friendly conversation.
there are conversations going on of using those electric car batteries as a way to help stabilize the grid, have a little bit more of a two-way communication. So in that situation, if everybody was electric cars out of Texas and this happened because the natural gas plants failed, the car batteries, in theory, might have been able to prevent the blackout and carried it until some other things came back online. So they're really looking at integrating everything together. So, but I mean, your point's well taken. I don't know. When you ever rely exclusively on any one thing, I get nervous. Even if it is what we're trying to sell. There's a lot of thought going into it as well. And it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out.
Just one real quick, because I know we have an agenda to get to, but during this cold time period, another thing that I found out when we were running the generators, I was telling people that, and they said, what? They don't know about it. And I said, this is how it works. So I said, if we had that here in Texas, or, we're just fine as long as our lines are up.
Yeah.
And they didn't know. Most people don't, I don't think.
Right.
I'm sorry.
No, that's right. Go ahead. I think it behooves us to make that known. It's nice that it got out there on Facebook and stuff. And even Scott got his smiling face on the front page there with the generation guys. Thanks for chipping in, Scott. But that's important. That's a big piece of our deal, that we can chip in when the times are tough. And in point of fact, if there were rolling blackouts going on, we could have taken care of ourselves. And that's the end of that story. So not only can we help others, we can take care of ourselves, and the community is kind of protected in that way. But that's an important part of our mission as Princeton Public Utilities Commissioners, to make sure that we can continue. Okay, wellhead protection program.
Yeah, and actually, before I go on to that, the conversation about Texas reminded me, I wanted to give an update as well. The Historical Society did order extra lapel mics. They were supposed to have been delivered last Friday, but they were coming from Texas. So shipment's got delayed on that a little bit. The plan is by next meeting, we'll have lapel mics for all the commissioners to make the recordings easier for people to watch and listen and follow along. So I wanted to let everybody know that we are working on, we're always working to improve the meeting itself as well.
Good deal, thank you.
On the wellhead protection plan, I did get a notification from the Minnesota Department of Health. Our project had been put on hold temporarily. They're hiring a new planner. And this has resulted in a small delay, but we are hoping to get moving again on our plan update shortly. So the wellhead protection plan hasn't been, no developments this last month, and that was because of MDH getting the staffing organized the way that they want to handle it. Service territory and development, as I mentioned, we've participated in several meetings with various developers and city staff on potential future projects. I've been in communication with East Central Energy on the industrial park annexation. We're currently on a holding pattern until the official order gets approved by the city council. There's a public meeting tomorrow night, and the land may be formally annexed at that time. It all depends if there's comments and things like that. Once I have a copy of that official order, I will notify East Central Energy, and we will start the legal and regulatory process to transfer that service territory to Princeton Public Utilities. Also wanted to let the commission know that SIPA is planning to host a work group to discuss the following items, and I'm planning attending this work group. The first is they are looking at potentially offering a rebate for an all-electric home. There's more and more interest as we decarbonize our system and promote, kind of the renewables and giving people a way to get away from the fossil fuel usage to create an all-electric home. So something co-ops have done for years. It's something that SIP's going to look at. So I was going to listen and see what SIP is thinking there. And then SIP is also going to be giving some information on some of their load acquisition efforts. That has particular interest in us because of the industry park expansion and other potential annexations that we could do in the future. So I will be listening in on both of those. The last item that I have, sir, under ongoing business is the electronic payment fees and deposit policy update, if you want me to move on to that, unless anybody has any questions on anything I've covered.
Go ahead.
Okay. I provided in your packets an updated memorandum on the electronic payment fees. It includes the information from the previous memo, but I did want to share information. We started asking some questions of our contractor as it pertains to charging a fee for electronic payments. The contractor reported back, and in your memo is actually a copy of their email. They wanted to let us know a couple of things. One is the discussion that we had underway last time was that our average cost per transaction is $1.67. That is because, and it's primarily through Visa, that we are given a utility rate, so to speak. But the conditions of that program is that we cannot charge the end user for a fee. If we decide to do that, then we would get put back onto a normal credit card fee structure, which my estimates would put us back to kind of our 2015, 2014 level. The other implication of doing that is if we decide that, well, we want to try it out, because that was a suggestion made during the conversation, we could always go back in 6 months. Unfortunately, this program has been discontinued, and we have been grandfathered in on it. So if we leave the program, we would not be able to go back and get the same rates in the future. So like I said, I've included the contractor's report in the memo. But to me, and for staff, it does raise several questions, and I've detailed those in your packet. The first question is, if rather than looking at $1.67, we're looking at $4.50 per transaction to break even, does that matter? Does that change how we look at this? So I wanted to point that out. If we go to a $4.50 fee, for some of our smaller customers, renters are an example of small homeowners, whose monthly bill could be around $100 a month. That's a 4.5% impact on their bills. My question is the commission comfortable with that level of surcharge? Again, that's assuming that our fee is based on a fixed transaction cost, even though our actual expenses are on a percentage basis. So we would have to come up with some methodology so that we understand the intent of the commission and how you want it. Current credit card structures are often based on, like I mentioned, a percent amount charged. However, a lot of utilities will move forward with a fixed fee to keep it simple for our customers. That being the case, see some anecdotal information that some utilities, at least in the past, have capped amounts that can be billed on a credit card, requiring customers to make multiple payments if there are large bills. Because of that, the difference between the fixed amount and the actual percentage charged. And in that scenario, the customer would pay multiple convenience fees for each transaction. So again, that's another detail that staff would need direction on. And also just some other logistical issues is that applied to all charge payments. Are there any circumstances in which the convenience fee would be waived? Some current customers currently have scheduled regularly occurring credit card payments. It would seem to staff that we would want to conduct some sort of outreach to those customers to ensure that they're proactively informed of that change. And if so, some strategies include a signed approved release form that customers would have acknowledging that fee would be put in place. So afterwards, we have documentation showing that they have been notified. If needed, and we wanted to go down that route, would the commission consider approving some additional IT and programming costs to develop such a strategy? And then talking with staff and working with the office of how this would actually work and who we think would be impacted. There is a significant concern among staff that this fee will have a disproportionate effect on our low-income customers. Does the commission wish to pursue any options as it relates to this segment of our customer base and help offset this additional financial burden? And primarily, there is the concern about those customers that are in arrears and facing disconnects, that they are increasingly relying on credit card payments. Customers that have been disconnected are not able to pay via personal check. That's our utility policy currently. So without credit cards, primary payments would have to be either in cash or money orders. This can cause delays in payments for customers since they need to visit their financial institution or postpone payment until cash becomes available. Those delays can result in increased administrative burden as office staff continue to spend more time reminding customers of past dues and soliciting payments. As an example, I put it in your packets that you can see for December 2020 and January 2021. The late payments that we had, the percentage of those that were handled via credit cards, and the percentage of that. In addition, on January 29th, staff sent out disconnection notice of past dues. Through February 2nd, payments were received and analyzed. Of the total charges, 47% were by check, 49% by credit card, and 4% by cash. So again, it's just the issue of the arrears and the collections is what we're wanting to point out there. So staff are concerned that convenience fee would further complicate some of our customers' ability to become current on their utility bill. Then there's the question of if payments to Princeton Utilities also includes amounts for the city of Princeton sewer charges, which PPU collects on behalf of the city. The city's position on instituting a credit card convenience fee is unknown. I haven't talked to the city about that yet, if they have a position. Given the commission's financial concern, is there an opportunity for some greater cost share between the city and the PUC on these fees? Is that something that the commission would like to solicit input from the city? And then staff is anticipating significant customer complaints. And so the question would be, how does the commission want us to respond? If we continue to move forward with this, what message is it that the commission wishes to convey? So I just wanted to kind of go through those as we start looking at how this would actually work. There's just some questions and some further guidance that we would like to hear from the commission on this issue. But with that, if there's any questions for me, I'd be happy to try to answer.
Dan, can you hear us okay?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah,
Go ahead, please.
I can start if you want. What my position on this is well, for one, if we started with the convenience fee charge, I mean, we wouldn't be forcing anybody to pay that. I mean, that would be their choice, because there's other options. So, and if people could still use a credit card, say the low income people, but it's going to cost the convenience fee. Although I mean, if you're low income, I believe you just, making it worse by using charges, but that's a whole other philosophy. Right now, I, as a ratepayer, I don't have a choice as to whether or not I am part of covering those fees for people who choose to use the credit card to gain miles or points or whatever. But if we had a convenience fee, I would have a choice whether I wanted to continue using my credit card to pay it or not. So that's kind of, and I've said this before, I think, as a commissioner, I'm responsible to save money for our ratepayers any way possible. And, but as a ratepayer, I pay with a credit card. I want to get miles and I want to be able to, go on vacation or whatever. But it's really, I don't see it for anybody else to have to pay them a convenience fee, and take, maybe it doesn't enact for 90 days. And we, they'll put some information out about what's going to happen or something like that. But that's my opinion. So let someone else talk.
Well, I guess it doesn't matter who started this conversation, but every month, and I don't mean today, but I brought this up several meetings ago, that the number that I keep seeing here is number 71 on the payables. It's always around that $1,800 to $2,000. And if we use this particular number, we're at $21,600 on an annual cost to us just to take that credit card. So I agree with what Dan said as far as he's a commissioner, I'm a commissioner. I've always looked at bottom lines in my own business or wherever. And I believe if I can vote myself, I mentioned a couple meetings, I think, that ago, that if we have a rate increase, we're going to eliminate that charge right there before I can honestly feel we're going to charge somebody and there's $22,000 that we can save. And everybody that's involved with this, that $22,000. I heard a lot of negatives, what you read. I get it. I do get it. I do get it. That's a pretty good list of why we shouldn't. I can just show you these numbers right here, that $21,600 is a big number on why we should.
Well, and my point in doing this is to get direction.
Yep.
So when, so it, you know, when this gets implemented and the office staff gets a screaming customer, which happens, what do we tell them? What is it? We want to make sure we're conveying the intent of the commission on this. And I want to make sure that we have the story that you want to convey to the customer. So somebody comes up and they're fit to be tied. What's our name, rank, and serial number? What we give them.
It's my belief that if somebody comes in because they're going to get charged either a percentage or a convenience fee, you know, whatever, the percentage is going to change. If you're charging $5 to someone that their bill is $50, okay, that's 10%. But if you're charging $5 and somebody's 100, that's 5%. So somebody could argue, well, that's not fair. But the people that are in the rears, or a lot of Americans, carry billions of dollars of debt on their credit card, and that's just what they do. That's the way they grew up, or that's how it works for them, whatever. You're always going to have somebody who's going to complain. But my concept was to list the options, not to be a negative, but to be a positive. We are simply giving you more options to pay your bill. And one of them we're adding would be an ACH, okay, automatic clearinghouse. And here's the mailing that goes with your bill. And these, under this new program, these are your options. You choose how you want to pay. And if somebody has to face somebody that's complaining, you didn't have to use that option. You could have used this option that doesn't cost you anything. It's up to you, Mr. Ratepayer, Mrs. Ratepayer, what option you want to use. We're not forcing you to use anything. And there is a free option. So I don't see the people standing at the gateway or the window and pounding. I'm sure it happens a lot more than I imagined, but it's going to be that same person every time, I believe, Kathy, or you know, I think it's rare that you're going to see me come in and pound, or anyone, and say, you know, this is wrong. Well, then come to the commission. You know, come to our next meeting.
Okay, I'd like to just offer my 2 cents, if I might. My concern is this. First of all, the 21,000 or 22,000 or whatever that number is per year is certainly not chump change in my book. That's a significant amount of money that we need to be concerned about. No argument. That same amount in terms of what we bill each year is a fairly small percentage. One of my concerns, or kind of a multiple layered concern here, is that making a relatively immediate change is going to change the burden, the workload in the office fairly significantly. And that cost hasn't been calculated very well. And the other thing is more of a political thing. If we start doing this willy-nilly without the proper kind of introduction, it looks a lot like a price increase in what I think is a very, very difficult year. And in addition to a difficult year, I think it's also a very volatile year, particularly coming off of what we have seen happening in other parts of the country. Texas comes to mind, where all of a sudden rates are being tossed about like holy smokes. People are getting $17,000. This is coming off of Facebook, so maybe that number's not exactly correct. But big bills coming now to try to cover some of these additional costs. We have a situation here where we can control some of that because we control some of our own generation. At some point, I don't think we can continue to spend 20 and 25 and 30 or whatever that number becomes going forward. My other concern here, if I I'm concerned is if we get off this program, then our costs are gonna accelerate. And, because we have this grandfather deal and we're kind of got our finger in the cookie jar, we've got a good deal going, and I hate to see us lose them. But we will most assuredly lose it if we change programs. Again, I'm gonna go back to my opening statement. $20,000 is not exactly chump change. But if we're gonna make a program change that is this significant, I think we better plan it very, very carefully and explain to folks all the options that they have, and having a surcharge of some sort, whether it's percentage or flat fee, is an option that they get to choose, not us. End of circle.
Dan, are you still there? I just would like to know your thoughts, or after everyone took a chance to speak.
Mr. Chairman, the concern about that rate that we have, although it kind of irked me a little bit. I almost felt like I was threatened a little bit, as like, if you do this, then we're going to do this. That just kind of hit me in the gut a little bit by the credit processing company, but I don't think that should be a reason that we need to do or to not make a decision, because I feel like that's kind of a threat of, well, if you do that, we're going to do this type of thing. They have the power to keep whatever rate they want to keep in there. They're a business just like any other business, and they can decide to hold that rate or not. So I feel like that threat just didn't sit well with me. And yes, I think I agree. It's the people's choice. There is free options, so it's not like we're forcing anybody to pay any extra fees. But right now, we're being forced to pay that fee, and I believe we're even paying the fee for the city for the sewer bills, which that doesn't sit well with me either. So.
So obviously, if we decide to have some kind of fee, whatever it might be, the city's going to have to be party to that agreement, because the bill goes out, the charges go on the same car, whether it's part of sewer or part of water. There's a percentage that's has to be accounted for. So it's something I think the city council ought to be made aware of. Here's our decision, and there's a component that the city will be responsible for.
Yeah, I would like to get some feedback from the city council on that before we, make any type of motion on it. I guess that would be my suggestion.
I guess, Chair, I guess I would, please, I wouldn't be able to make a comment how the city council would feel, but I think that is something that we need to talk about. And at our joint meeting, that would be a perfect opportunity to do that, although that is sometime in the future. But in the meantime, if you're going to meet with Tracy or the financial person at City Hall, that would be, I think, an appropriate way to go with that.
So you would recommend me starting, Tracy?
I don't think so.
Okay.
That'd be a good place to start the discussion. And I can bring this back to the council tomorrow, that this is an item that the PUC is considering as a convenience fee, and that would affect the sewer rate or the sewer fees also.
Are you hearing that, Dan?
Yeah, just barely, but I do have a question for Councilor Zimmer.
Yeah.
Does the city currently accept credit cards in their office? And if they do you charge a convenience fee?
They do not. I already asked.
Thank you.
The city does not accept credit card payments at this time.
Okay. Thank you.
But I do know it's something that staff is interested in looking at.
And that would be with Tracy again to talk about that.
Yeah.
It's a change, but if you'd like me to, members would be to bring this up tomorrow as that you are not struggling with it, but discussing it.
I would be very interested in that information because if by chance, I'm just grabbing a number here because I don't know. But if we're spending 22,000 a year, the sewer charges on our payables is almost 109,000. So if people are putting that percentage on a credit card and we're not collecting that from the city, you know, that's part of the problem too. But it would be interesting on what your credit card for the city charges are.
We don't.
Right, they don't.
No, but you have an expense. You don't charge the convenience fee.
No, they don't.
We don't use credit cards at all.
Oh, you don't use credit card? Okay, I misunderstood that.
No.
So at this point, almost to the end point, the ratepayers have been paying the convenience charge that we are paying for the city sewer. And the
Very well
city is
said.
not responsible for any of that, so.
So I want to make sure I get it right. You're saying the public utilities have been paying the fee that credit cards charge for not only electrical rates, water rates, but also for sewer rates.
Exactly.
Right.
Okay, I need to be able to.
Yeah.
bring-
Now, we do have to point out, what do we charge the city for an admin fee?
75 cents per bill
So the city does pay us 75 cents per bill
per sewer.
for sewer, but that is to cover all the tracking and administration and postage and mailings and credit card payments and all. So it doesn't,
So this needs to be, discussion more.
yeah. So I just want to be
I'm gonna
sure.
bring this to the council tomorrow. That's like 22,000.
Yeah, if it's 21.6, if I use this month's number
For a year.
for a year.
Okay. I'll just bring it for their information, my report to them. And that's what I'll do.
And so what I'm hearing for direction for me is to reach out to Tracy, start seeing if the city has any thoughts that they wish to share. Is there anything else that the commission wants me to also work on? This at the moment.
Well, I just think it needs to be addressed, but it's not just, like Dan said, we're not trying to charge the customer. We're giving them another option that is a free option on how their payments can be. And if we can flip this information, so if I go into the city and I want to pay something and I don't have my checkbook or cash with me, I want to use a credit card, I can't. So if you don't want to charge me anything, well, maybe we don't take credit cards. I mean, there's all kinds of different angles to look at this, but we can't keep paying $22,000 a year for someone else's convenience.
Dan, do you have any thoughts about flat fees or percentages?
You know, I think a percentage would be probably more fair, but I guess I really, I thought maybe first across the bridge, are we going to charge a convenience fee or not? And then dive into that, but I guess I wasn't prepared to really make any decisions at this point. I thought it was good to gather more information and talk about it a little more. But after hearing that the city doesn't even accept credit cards at all, I think, we're giving so many options, but it should not be at the ratepayers' expense. So, how that shakes out, I guess we could dive into that a little more, but maybe by next meeting, we could have a couple options, on how that would look.
Okay. Yeah, the city has been accepting credit cards, they just didn't know it. We've been doing it for them.
If I could ask a quick clarification.
Yes.
So the conversation today has been about credit cards. As the memo shows, credit cards have one fee. We have another fee for electronic checks and another fee for bank payments. Is the intent of the commission to have 3 different fees?
No.
So we're only looking at charging for credit cards.
My opinion, if I was to vote today, which I'm not going to, is you make it simple for the staff and for the ratepayers that there's one fee and there's a free payment.
Yeah, I agree, that makes sense to me, just one fee, keep it simple.
But that's my question is, are we including electronic checks and bank payments as a fee, as a convenience?
Do we pay for ACH?
No.
Sorry?
No,
No. Okay, so there doesn't need to be a convenience fee for that.
Correct.
That's the free offering.
Right.
Okay. So what are you talking about when you say electronic check?
Kathy, you can speak to that better than I.
if you pay electronically, you can use either your credit card, your debit card.
Debit card.
You can set up with directly from your checking account rather than using a card.
Right.
Some people don't have a card, so they use just their checking account. I just set up a business with their checking account.
Get a routing number and an account number and
Correct.
suck the money out.
Some people will log, like if you log into your own bank account and you direct the payment from your bank account, that's considered a bank pay. And there's a 40-cent charge on that. I think it was 40 cents.
Yes, correct.
Because that's considered electronic, so that goes directly to our contractor.
So just use me for an example. Every month I get an email that said, we're taking this money while you're not looking. While you're sleeping, we're taking this money. It comes right out of my checkbook, not off a debit card or a credit card. Is public utilities charged for that transaction?
You? No,
No.
because you were set up on ACH.
On ACH.
Right.
So anybody that wants to give us a routing number and account number, the ACH can be set up. So it just comes out of their checking account. There's no fee attached to it.
Right, they would have to sign a form to do that.
And that's becoming very, very common.
We had that in place, that was in place way before we even started taking credit cards. That's been in place before I was even here.
But to Rick's question, what is the difference between that and an electronic check?
The automatic clearinghouse goes directly from us to our bank.
There's
From
Greg's
your
question.
bank.
Oh, okay.
Right, but I think to follow up, if I may, Mr. Chairman, that if it comes from an electronic check, I believe your question was, what's the difference from ACH and electronic check?
Right.
Okay, so are all other forms, are we being charged for all other forms of payment except for an ACH? Be it this, that, or the other thing, whatever the options are. Do we have some kind of charge to us?
On all electronic payments we do. ACH I don't consider as an electronic payment.
Okay, so the example I gave you with me,
Right.
that's an ACH.
Correct.
If somebody gives you a paper check, you process that electronically?
No,
You just drop it off at the bank?
right.
But there's not a charge for that, other than your time to write the deposit up and everything else.
So what would be an example of an electronic check?
Well, you would log into your account on the portal. And you would enter in, set it yourself up, you could set yourself up for auto pay. And then you would enter in you would pick your checking account rather than a credit card or debit card. You enter in your routing number, you do it all yourself, nothing goes through me, you're doing it
Same,
yourself. You enter in your routing number and your account, your checking account number, or your savings. That would be considered an electronic check.
and there's a fee for that.
And there's a fee for that.
Jeremy?
Like for instance, like when I pay my mortgage. I don't have an automatic payment set up where it just automatically every month takes it out of my account. I log into my credit card or my truck payment or whatever. I log in, and some of that information is saved, but I authorize the payment every month to come up. It's just like writing a check, except I'm doing it on my computer screen. I believe that is what is considered an electronic check.
What are your charges for that, Jeremy?
I don't get charged anything. I would think that my mortgage company would be charged that fee, or my truck payment company or my Cabela's card would be charged that fee. That is not passed on to me. If I write Cabela's card, my Capital One Cabela's card, if I write them a $200 check, it's $200 towards my bill. I think they would see a 200, they would see a 47 or whatever their rate is. That's a difference. I think it's a convenience because they're processing it every month versus one time and just setting it up.
I guess the point of my bringing this up is not to be a sticky wicket, but to say that it's a bit confusing for many folks. And so that if we're going to do this, there has to be some clarity about what is an automatic clearinghouse, what is an electronic check, is there a difference between a debit card and a credit card? For example, I paid my Verizon bill with my debit card because there's no charge for that. But if I put it on my credit card, there is. So for me, it's a no-brainer. Okay, no charge for the debit, take it out of the debit. But so these complicating things, we want to make sure from our standpoint that we know clearly what those differences are, so that when this sheet comes out that Rick is talking about, it's very clear. Here's the charge for this. Here's the charge for this. This is no charge, and this is no charge. You bring in bags of pennies, no charge. Well, we might charge, but you get my point. You know, if you're bringing cash in, you're bringing a check. Those things are free. If you set up an ACH with Kathy in the office or something, that's free. But if you're using a debit card, it's going to cost us something. If you use a credit card, it's going to cost us something. And those costs need to be explained to the ratepayers so that they can make a choice intelligently. Sir.
Maybe in lieu of time, we can just clarify what our forward-moving action is. But I don't think none of us want to become the bank. That's up to them to figure out what payment form they want to use. They want to write a check, they know that they're comfortable with that. They don't own a credit card. I don't think anybody has to explain to the person that walks in the door to pay their bill on this, that, or the other thing, or what's the best deal. That's between them and their bank. What I think we need to do, what I said in the beginning, and I believe Dan agreed, is that there's just one charge across the board. You can use all these payments, but this one and this one are free. But you will be charged when you use these over on this sheet. And we're not starting this March 1st, but I think we're starting to formulate a plan on where here's the options. We have 5 different options.
So in this example where if somebody uses a bank payment, where they have their bank payment bill, we incur a 40-cent transaction fee. If we come up with a convenience fee of, let's just say $4.50, it's a back of the envelope stuff. Is it the intent then that they would get charged $4.50 for something that costs us 40 cents?
I understand what you're saying, but let's address that when maybe it's going to be a $3 charge. Okay, I don't think we should ever go backwards collecting a payment. If it's 40 cents or 99 cents, I don't think we should go backwards, my opinion. But you can't imagine somebody saying, well, Kathy's going to say this was going to cost you 40 cents plus a 10-cent handling charge. It just has to be simple. This is the charge, this is the fee. But if you don't like those, these are free. Okay. Now let's talk about the nickels and dimes when we get further down the road.
Okay.
And I think I'm not arguing that one fee. If we're charged for a transaction, then we should have a fee for that. But I think it should be clear to the consumer that these options 1, 2, and 3 have a fee attached. Options 4 and 5 do not. And so you understand clearly what those options are. Here's the explanation. You choose. You've got 1 through 5 or 1 through 4, whatever it is. You get the pick. But I'm working out what is the appropriate fee, because I think having 2 or 3 different fees is nightmarish.
That's not even possible.
It just doesn't make sense. Okay, is there any, Dan, you want to add anything else at the end here?
No, I'm ready to move on.
Okay. That covers 8E pretty well, I think. New business.
9A memo 21-07. This is just informational. We were notified by Rubber Bank that they're converting our collateral coverage above the FDIC limit back to pledged securities. There is some background provided in the packet. There's no action needed at this time. This is more just so the commission is aware that Rubber will be using pledged securities for our collateral coverage on funds that are above the FDIC limits. Any questions on that, or? No. Okay.
No.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair.
Sorry?
I'm sorry, the next item, did you want me to move forward?
Yes, please.
Next item, number 21-08, is regarding a skid steer purchase. The maintenance costs for our current skid steer loader, which is a 1997 Bobcat, has increased to the point where replacement is deemed economical. In recent weeks, the cost to properly maintain that unit has raised questions as to the most cost-effective way to meet our field needs. In addition, the current skid steer was purchased before we had acquired a forklift. With the addition of the forklift in our fleet a few years ago, we no longer require the larger skid steer frame. The smaller unit will serve us much better for the work that we do, which is primarily for snow removal, minor service work, and other miscellaneous work around the yard. It is anticipated that a new skid steer will serve us well for many, many years. We did get 2 bids in, and we are actually working on a 3rd one as well for a cat. This purchase was not included in the 2021 budget, so a separate approval is needed. The quotes above include credits received for using the state bid process, which as a municipal utility we are eligible for. At this time, we still think we can negotiate a little bit on the prices. We would like to move forward with trading in our existing 1997 Bobcat skid steer and replacing with a new one. What we would like, or what we're requesting, is approval from the commission, and we can just say that we are authorized to purchase a new skid steer with a price not to exceed $34,500, and staff will continue to negotiate the best price that we can for a unit. But we're looking for some direction from the commission as to what makes sense.
Dan, I'm going to kind of defer to you. You're our skid steer wizard, and we haven't gotten into the whole track drive or wheel drive argument. Can you shed any light here, or what can you say?
Sure. Well, first, primarily snow removal. Snow wheels, skids, and steers is going to work best for that, obviously. Probably has more breakout force, but I don't think we're probably doing much grading. That's where the tracks would come in. The only question I have for Scott, and Scott's still there.
Yes, he is.
Okay, I'm not even looking at the screen where you guys are at, but I'm looking at using that for the agenda. But are the current attachments that we have going to fit the machine that you're looking to purchase?
Yes.
You want to come up here so he can hear you better, Scott?
Get a little closer to the mic here.
Because I just personally, I ran into this, I purchased a new skid steer and I found out half my attachments weren't interchangeable, or what have you. So it's just one thing that I've learned the hard way to make sure your attachments are going to work. I don't know if you use a snow blower or what.
Yes, that's the one piece that we have to watch. The snow blower takes a 7-pin. The quotes that I got, I made sure that they included the 7-pin upgrade on it.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that was one question I had. Otherwise, I think both, I talked to Mr. Butcher this week. I said, I believe that there's been a lot of changes since '97. So there's some nice features, and Kent, to me, when I demoed them, seemed to be more operator friendly. But they're all good.
Okay, sure. All right. In that case, gentlemen, Dan, if you're comfortable with that, I'd entertain a motion to authorize the expenditure of up to $34,500 for the purchase of a new skid steer of some color, either white or green.
And staff will then work to get the best deal possible.
Okay. Would anybody like to make that motion?
Yeah, I'll make that motion. So moved.
Okay.
I'll second, but with the comment, if you show them Midwest Machinery's price, I bet they match it.
That's why we wanted,
Just my comment.
yeah, that's why we wanted just some wiggle room so that we can continue to.
I second.
The motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor, including comments, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried 3-0. All right. And then 8C, simple membership.
Yes, sir. Memorandum 21-09. Princeton Public Utilities must officially designate a representative and an alternate representative to SIPA. For voting purposes, we designate both of those so that the representative is able to vote on measures impacting the full membership. In addition, an alternate is also appointed should the representative be unavailable. Traditionally, the PPU member representative has been the general manager and the alternate has been the electric superintendent. The current representative is myself, and we are currently still have Ryan Grant designated as the alternate. Ryan Grant is obviously no longer with Princeton Public Utilities, and no new alternate should be appointed. As I mentioned, traditionally, we have made that the electric superintendent, but we are looking for the commission to decide on who you want that alternate to be.
I would like to suggest that we immediately throw Jeremy into this mix. I think it would be good for him and good for us. I've been to SIPA meetings. Much of their discussion is way over my head. But I expect that linemen, and particularly supervisors, need to be cognizant of what's going on with the infrastructure, and I think that's an important part of what's going on at SIPA. Your guidance there and your participation there is equally important, Keith, so I think it's important that you stay there. But I think Jeremy ought to start getting his feet wet. Comments, questions? And do we need a motion?
Yes, I do.
I'll make a motion that Jeremy can fill that position.
Second?
Motion has been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Jeremy, this is your turn to sound off.
Getting my feet wet, yes. I don't think I'll be diving in head first, so.
All right, motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried 3-0. Memo 21-10, SIMPA financial metrics discussion.
Yes, sir. So I wanted to share some information with the commission and so they're aware of what I have received. SIPA recently provided its membership with side-by-side comparisons of utility cash reserve metrics. And based on this information, the commission may wish to revise its current cash reserve policy. That's why I'm presenting this information today. What SIPA does is they look at trends through 2019 using the individual members' financial audits. This is of particular interest to SIPA because the members' financial performance can impact SIPA's own financial ratings, thereby affecting their future bonding costs. So it's something that they pay attention to. Their analysis is based on the Fitch ratings methodology for public power entities. And it is hoped that with SIPA providing this information, it will actually help assist its members, including us, to increase their knowledge and awareness of our current financial position. The trends will allow for a better formulation of goals and enhanced stakeholder communication. The primary metrics that SIPA reviewed is days of cash and investments on hand, debt to funds available for debt service, or FADS as it's referred to, equity to total capitalization, capital expenditures to depreciation, and debt per customer. For Princeton Public Utilities, the findings show that PPU's results in comparison to the SIPA median are good for, we've got low long-term debt, we've got good and recently exceeded the days of cash on hand. We have low debt to FADS ratio. We have average equity to capitalization. We have lower capital expenditures to depreciation, but higher than the Fitch median, which is fair, and low debt per customer, which is good. As a side note, we have an A3 Moody's credit rating, which is considered upper medium grade, and low credit risk for long-term ratings. This also corresponds to a Prime 1, Prime 2 rating, which is defined as best ability or high ability to repay short debt. So all that's really good news. In regards to this issue, I did contact our auditor on this issue. They did not provide me with an opinion in terms of changing our cash reserve methodology. So currently our cash reserve policy is included in your packets. And what it looks at is the working funds with a minimum level set at 80 days for electric, 300 days for water. And it's determined by dividing the monthly cash amount less depreciation as listed in our balance sheet by the prior year's total annual operating expenses found on our income statement at year end. The working capital or cash policy is therefore based on the total cash amount as listed in the balance sheet. Based on inputs from SIPA and our auditors, it may be appropriate to include the rate stabilization funds as part of PPU's working funds reserve. That reason is twofold. One, as auditing standards have evolved over the last few years, these funds are not considered as restrictive as perhaps they once were. Recently, some financial reclassification has occurred that impacted our 2019 reporting. SIPA's involvement in the establishment and implementation of member rate stabilization accounts has significantly decreased. The design and implementation of these accounts are the responsibility of each individual member. SIPA does not exercise oversight authority on individual members' financial decisions. If we did implement such a modification, the resulting change in our days of cash on hand are listed in the table in your packet. In January 2019, under our current methodology, we have 94 days of cash on hand. If we included rate stabilization, we would have been at 171. In January of 2020, we had 111, and with rate stable, that would have been 187. And the preliminary numbers, because we haven't done month end, but the preliminary numbers that I used, that I was looking at, showed that we would be sitting at 126 days of cash on hand, and with rate stabilization funds included, that would be at 205. So you see, we have been increasing our days of cash on hand year after year. The other intention in the analysis that I did was we would still not include the capital improvements fund in the days of cash on hand calculation for internal planning and evaluation needs. My reason for that is because Princeton Public Utilities is anticipating some large capital projects in the midterm, which would be funded through the CIF. I'm worried that if we include the CIF in the calculation and then we have a large expenditure, it would create creates significant swings in our days of cash on hand metric, creating in later years confusion and be open to misinterpretation as to the true financial state of Princeton Public Utilities. In short, if we include the CIF, I didn't want to avoid using those CIF funds because it would impact the days of cash on hand calculation and create an incentive to go with some more expensive bonding as an example. So just wanted to make sure we understand kind of, the impacts of different decisions. So as far as the recommendation, this is more informative at this moment. The commission may wish to update the cash reserve policy methodology to include the rate stabilization funds. If that's the commission's desire, we can prepare a resolution for the next meeting. If not, we can continue as is. Like I said, I just wanted to provide the information to the commission and get some direction as to how the commission wants to handle this particular financial metric.
Anybody have, I'll start off, but feel free to jump in here, Dan.
Okay.
My concern, first of all, on the CIF, the capitalization funds, I think it's critical to keep those separate because of the way we have those capital expenditures already planned for. If we start mixing things, then we're going to get into a situation where we're ready to go forward with something and that cash may not be there. So I think it's important for us to separate that. For almost the same reasons, the rate stabilization fund, in my mind, is kind of sacrosanct. We here have the ability to stabilize our rates despite fluctuations in the marketplace. Now, the marketplace for electricity has been relatively stable over the last few years. But I think all of a sudden, because of the second polar vortex in 3 years, we've seen that those costs can fluctuate fairly dramatically. And our ability to moderate the impact of those cost increases is critical to protecting our ratepayers going forward. And I hate, if we start mixing that back into all of our just cash on hand, we're not going to be able to moderate those fluctuations and that volatility in the marketplace as much as we have in the past. I think it's in the best interest of the ratepayers here to maintain that rate stabilization fund in a way that we can flex and move as the market moves going forward. One of the things that came out of the brouhaha with the cold weather in Texas is that natural gas prices were going up rather dramatically. People couldn't buy it. They had to go find diesel, get diesel plants to run. There was all kinds of stuff in the press. That's not new stuff. But I think to protect ourselves against that, having that rate stabilization fund there allows us a way to protect our customers against that volatility. So that's my 2 cents.
If I may,
Please.
there's no way that I would want the capital improvement funds mixed in this in any way. Yeah, that doesn't even make sense to me. What I do enjoy though is seeing the illustration that you have. I don't know that we really need to change anything, but it is interesting to me that if we do use the stabilization rate with our actual days on cash, it shows 2 different stories. And I find that story comforting. So I don't know that we need to really even change anything. It's just how we look at things. But I would not do the CIF in that. That's my own opinion. That doesn't belong in anything counting the days on cash, in the way I look at things. But I do like seeing this little illustration that you have. Dan, do you have a copy of that in front of you?
Yeah, I'm looking at it, and I can add my take on it. I do have a question for Manager Butcher, though. So if we had a windstorm come through and had a use that rate stabilization money for repairs to our infrastructure.
Yes,
Is that what
yes,
okay, because that before, that's why we didn't, I believe that's why we weren't thinking we could use that, because that was more for like a polar vortex and fluctuating rates and to stay, just what it says, stabilize the rates. But you're saying that we can use that rate stabilization funds for catastrophic events or unforeseen,
the conversations I've had with both SIPA and our auditors is that the rate stabilization account is under the purview of the commission. It is unrestricted and it can be used for whatever commission deems
So that-
necessary.
okay, so then, God forbid both things happen. Where we, it was a natural disaster that maybe took down the power grid and we, in the middle of winter or something, and we've seen rates skyrocket for whatever reason. Then, and we used up, things for repair and things for rate stabilization, then could we then dip into that CIF money?
I get so again, SIPA has no jurisdiction over our financials, so it's not a SIPA decision. In talking with the auditors, part of the reclassification that occurred in 2019 was the fact that our CIF is not restricted on a contract basis. It's not, there are no rules to that. So it is an account set up by the commission, and therefore, if, with the phrase I've been using, if the wheels come off the bus, the commission has the ability to tap into those resources to make sure that we keep going.
Okay.
So that's CIF. Now, traditionally, the way the commission has looked at that CIF is it is for capital improvements that we depreciate over time. So
Sure.
it can be used for poles and pipes and a generator and things like that. I'll give you an example. Say our entire IT system went down and we couldn't send out bills in a month. The CIF isn't set up to cover that loss of revenue for a period of time because it's not a capital investment. At least that's the intent with how it was set up. But the way the auditors looked at it was if things were really bad for a long period of time, the commission does have the authority to reclassify those funds if it desires. And so that's why they listed it as unrestricted assets in our official audit.
Okay. Well, that makes sense. So that to me, it makes a lot of sense. So as long as we just have clarification on that rate stabilization fund. So that basically puts us where we want it to be, as long as we can use those monies in those situations.
Correct.
And I also want to say I do agree that the capital fund should not. I don't believe that should be included in there. Although I do think we should set some policy as to how much should be in that CIF.
We already do. We have a cap of 1.5 million for that fund.
Okay, good, perfect. I just want to make sure it's like that we have, and does that increase by a percentage with inflation or anything?
It does not. It is a fixed amount, and it would just be reevaluated as need be by the commission.
Yeah, maybe that's something we should look at, so make sure it increases by an inflation rate as capital expenses improve or increase.
And that 1.5 million cap is the same for both electric and water. They're both capped at the same amount.
Okay.
When was the 1.7,
1.5.
1.5 was set when?
Well, we set it in policy in December of 2019, but it had been that way for a while, I believe. I know commissions over time have increased that, so it used to be lower. It's something that Kathy and I, monitor. If we ever start getting close to 1.5, then that's where we would come to the commission and say, okay, what do you want us to do? But we're not there. So it hasn't been an issue. Yeah.
We'll look
So is that, I would make a recommendation that you move forward with preparing a resolution for the next meeting.
Are you saying to include the rate stabilization in the days of cash calculation?
Correct.
Are you suggesting that we don't have a rate stabilization fund identified? Right now, we have a situation where we identify a rate stabilization fund as being a separate fund from capital improvements, for example.
Correct.
And so we keep that out there as a fund. It's an internal thing, and we know from a practical standpoint, if there's something that comes up, we can borrow from Peter to pay Paul, more or less. But we keep it out there as a hedge against fluctuations primarily. But again, if there is a disaster of some sort, we know that we can borrow against that. If we remove it as a category, as a what would you call it, a fund, identified as a fund, then it just becomes general cash on hand that it looks like we're not using for the benefit of the ratepayers.
I guess my thought in writing this up was we would still maintain two separate funds. We're just changing the methodology for how we calculate our days of cash on hand.
Yeah, that's the way I understood it too. That just to update the cash reserve policy methodology based upon the recommendations from the SIPA report.
So then we don't need a resolution.
Then we don't need a motion, or we do need a motion.
Again, what I would take for today, no, we don't need a motion. I would have to go back and write up a resolution to change our existing cash reserve policy to include the rate stabilization monies if that's what the commission wants. We would have to change the policy. So I would have to rewrite that.
I guess
What happens if we don't?
Then the days of cash report that I've been providing will continue to only look at the cash and cash equivalents, and it won't include the rate stabilization account.
But we can have, that information is also available to us.
Correct.
in the illustration in which we're looking at.
Yeah, and what I can do is if you don't want to change the cash reserve policy, I can change the days of cash on hand report to include both numbers, and that way you always have them, without having to change policy. I just didn't know if, one of the things that we had talked about when we established this cash reserve policy in December of 2019 was eventually you want to get away from the 80 days and increase it.
Mm-hmm.
So, at some point, I think the intent was we were going to go back and revisit that anyway. So the question is that something the commission wants to do now, or are we in a, is everything in a good spot and there's no need to adjust anything at this time? That's the kind of direction that I'm looking for.
Well, my opinion is that we're looking at 180 as far as days. And my statement earlier was, I like what I see here. I don't think we have to change anything. I just enjoy seeing the rate stabilization number with the days and the days separate.
Okay.
So my opinion is just leave it the way it is, but illustrate it with both.
Well, I have a question for Commissioner Schwartz. So then, are we still looking at getting the days of cash on hand up to 180?
Yeah, yes.
Okay. But even, so then, when you included the rate stabilization, you might be up to 240 then.
Right. But to me, that's a security blanket on our days. It just gives me a little more comfort And at some point in time, we can change what we're discussing at any time. It's just having an extra blanket, if you will. It's still there, it's still separate. It's for a different purpose, or can be used for a different purpose. But just looking at it and seeing January from 1 month at 205, that doesn't give me any reason to jump up and down and say we made our 180-day reserve.
Okay. Well, what I'm kind of thinking, what's going through my head right now is, the next commissioners that come through and start looking at this policy, are they gonna say, oh boy, we're only at 94 or 100 of days of cash, we should be at 180, and are they gonna have to go through this whole process and then research and find out that maybe they should have included the rate stabilization fund? I just it would be nice to have it simpler for the people that follow us.
Yeah, I'd like to plan on the strong side, and that's why I'd only want to look at the days of cash on hand to get that. I understand what you're saying about somebody new coming in and looking at it and saying, well, what do you mean 180 days, we're at 205? But that's the reason why I'd want to keep it separate. But it's just a visual for me. Maybe to some it confuses people. I don't know. I like the visual.
Yeah, I do too. But we've been looking at this for a long time, and so yeah, I think I would be okay either way, either updating the policy or including that rate stabilization in the presentation,
Well, like Rick, I kind of like seeing the presentation, the extra 79 days that shows up when you include the rate stabilization money. That's a nice cushion, but that means we have 126 days of cash on hand for all the other stuff, but we still have 79 days of rate stabilization money that we could use specifically for that. So I think, when this whole conversation came up back in 2019 about the 180 days, when we actually had something like 80 days on the electric side. And I think everybody agreed at that time, Dan, you maybe remember this, that 80 days was just not nearly adequate for the operation that we're trying to run here, that we really needed to get those operating expenses, operating costs up to 180 days. And I still think that that's important. Throwing the rate stabilization funds in there is kind of a cheat, in my opinion. I think it's okay as long as everybody understands what we're doing there, but we really need to have that 180 days of operating expenses above and beyond our rate stabilization. Should we need that for other things? The upgrading some of the stuff that goes wrong on a day-to-day basis. Transformers and more line and telephone poles, and I don't know what else might be in that bucket, but I think having 180 days of what I would call real operating money is important for us. If we need 205 in a particular season for something, then we can talk to our friends at the rate stabilization fund and see if we can make a deal. But I think understanding that that's possible is important. But I think from conveying to our ratepayers that we have a rate stabilization fund that we maintain in their best interest is an important feature of how we set up our books.
Okay. Yeah, so is there like is there like if we were gonna look at both these numbers together, is there an amount that's just too much? You know, now we should, you know, is there, how many days between both the cash on hand and rate stabilization fund? Like how much is too much?
That's an interesting question, and I think that's something that Mr. Butcher ought to investigate. He thinks that's a joke. I'm serious.
I'm laughing at Jeremy.
I think that's that's an important idea, Dan. What, you know, how much is too much? And I guess the first thought is there's never too much, but I think it's important that we maintain some sense of what should be our total goal here. How much do we want to have in our total rate stabilization side? How much in that total days of cash on hand should we be looking at before we start changing rates or making things, making dramatic changes in our program? And we should have that number in front of us so that we're cognizant of what's going on out there.
I just wanted to say, Keith, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the study that we're doing of DGR would greatly help us with that answer. You know, with our, on the electric side. I mean, if they come back with projected growth and load growth throughout the state, that number could change significantly very quickly.
Like I said, I think this is an important number to get under our head. I think that 180 days of operating expense comes from experience that we as commission members had prior to Rick's arrival here. From a business standpoint, in businesses that I've been involved with, 180 days was a dead stop minimum. Dan, I don't know where you came up with yours, but I think you probably be hard pressed to want to operate with less than a 180-day reserve as well.
Right, I mean, you know, 6 months of cash is nice, comfortable level, I think, in any situation, whether it's personal or for sure business, because there, you know, you get a lot more catastrophes in business. So.
If you go back to the time, Dan, and I think you may remember this, when I was just a visitor for that year and a half.
Yeah.
I did my own study when I saw the 80 days, and I kind of cringed because it wasn't enough. And my study said 180 days, and then I think you did a study and came up with the same thing.
Yeah, I remember that. That was part of the decision-making process on putting a hold on the pilot program.
Okay. So where we're at, if I'm not mistaken, is to basically leave things as they are, report the numbers so we have a good idea of where we are, but come up with a metric for what is the max number. So that means it's the max of cash on hand from an operations standpoint. What's the max on hand from a rate stabilization? You know, in order to do that, I think you have to almost create a scenario that says, if the rates did this, how long would we be okay? So, you know, that's, I guess, our charge. Do you agree with that, Dan?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking.
Rick, are you nodding over there? I think we're all in agreement there. That's kind of like what we'd like to get back from you. So, okay. All right. Any other questions, comments from the peanut gallery out there? Anything else, Keith?
No, sir.
In that case, I would entertain a motion for adjournment.
I so move.
I'll second.
Motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye.